Coming to you live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. This is Primetime News at 8 on SABC 3. Here are the top stories making headlines. Local stocks sank deeper into the red as investors try to make sense of the US tariff announcement. The DA has filed papers in the Western Cape High Court today to challenge the Parliament's passing of the 2025-2026 national budget. Justice Minister Mamoloko Kubai says she has requested a comprehensive report on the Omotoso case. And in sports news, Orlando Pirates coach Jose Rivero has shocked Buccaneer fans by announcing his resignation at the end of the season. Good evening and a warm welcome to Prime News on 3. Let's start with this. Local stocks sank deeper into the red as investors try to make sense of the US tariff announcement. On the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, losses were spread right across the different sectors, with the bank being the biggest losers. The overall market shed over 3% in line with lower global stocks.
The markets are feeling the heat on the back of the reciprocal tariffs announced by US President Donald Trump. The local bourse opened with everything in the red Thursday morning. The JSE took its cue from weaker global markets. Local developments have also weighed on the JSE, particularly concerns around the future of the GNU.
I'm seeing that there's instability in the market and there's been a decline on the JSE of up to 3% already. And this is an aspect of what I believe is multifaceted things going on in the market, primarily driven by the instability that's coming from the government of national unity. I've watched the videos this morning of the speeches from the DA voicing their discontent and their unhappiness with the report regarding the budget speech. And so there seems to be instability, and this is then affecting the confidence in the market.
The rand continued to extend its losses, trading shy of the 19 rand mark against the US dollar.
The recent political tensions around the disagreement on South Africa's budget and so worries around the stability of the GNU have also negatively affected the rand. But the DA is likely to continue to wish to remain in South Africa's coalition government. Of course, if this does change, then there could be a further impact on the currency. With the financial markets reacting overnight over both the US tariffs and South Africa's budget disagreements, the rand moved in thin trade and could see some further moderation today on more liquidity at open South African markets, already, of course, at 1877 versus closer to 19 to the dollar.
While the local unit has been trading at its weakest since Wednesday, some analysts believe that its losses could be capped by the falling US dollar. This is due to Trump's tariff announcement that keeps traders on edge.
We've seen that today is trying to recover some of the lost ground, and all because after Donald Trump announced all those tariffs which were worse than we thought, we've seen the US dollar itself losing most of its ground, and that helped to get the rand to at least recover some of the lost ground.
There are concerns that the current weakness in local currency could fuel inflation that has been coming down in recent months. Consumer inflation has been contained below 4% since the beginning of the year.
The South African rand fell against most other countries in the world, and obviously the reason for that has to do is twofold actually. The one has to do with the budget, the on and off budget. And the other one, and I guess that is the most important reason why the rand came under pressure, has to do with the possible end of the government of national unity in South Africa. That, of course, will be bad for the South African economy, and the financial markets are reacting to that.
Market analysts say fear lingers on as the market continues to struggle amid local and global worries.
Well, I think that's what the market's struggling to do at the moment, is actually price in these tariffs. So, I think it's always dangerous to say this time is different in markets, but the fact is this time is different because we don't know what's going to happen next, and we don't know how much of these tariffs are posturing, trying to prompt bilateral talks around individual trade agreements. How much of this is, I suppose, trying to normalize the picture. But from traditional economic theory, we know tariffs are bad. One, they create trade wars.
The markets are likely to remain jittery as individual countries seek to ascertain the specifics of the tariffs attached to specific products they export. Nothando Makutulela, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Trade, Industry and Competition Minister Pak Stawu says that they are still trying to make sense of the new tariffs imposed on South Africa by the United States. Last night, U.S. President Donald Trump imposed a 30% tariff on all imports to the U.S.
I think as indicated by the President, we are committed to engaging with the United States of America, as would demonstrate to be all other countries that are affected by the trade tariffs that they've imposed, so that we're able to, one, seek clarity, get the clarity, but also to engage about the future of our trade relations going forward.
For more on this, we are joined by Hlelo Giose, Chief Investment Officer at First Avenue Investment Management. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Before we can start, let's start first with unpacking the minister's concerns about the U.S.'s decision. In layman's terms, what are tariffs and how do they work?
Right. So tariffs, as a general term, tariffs are mechanisms that govern the price of a good as it enters a country and as it leaves a store into the consumer's hands. Those are tariffs. So there are two kinds of tariffs. There are direct tariffs, which are what you pay at the ports when you import a good. When the ships come in, excise taxes, basically, that's a direct tariff. Now, there are a lot of other tariffs, ad valorem tariffs. So that's the tariff that the Minister of Finance places on tobacco and alcohol, right?
Yes.
And then there's VAT. VAT is an indirect tariff that if you're a local manufacturer or a local service provider, you get a rebate back. But a foreign operator who sends his products here to South Africa, and the products get in through the border or through the ports, pays a tariff there. When they get into the store, he sells the product through the store, but he does not get a rebate because he's a foreign manufacturer, but the local manufacturer gets a rebate, right? So
yes,
that is exactly the type of unequal playing field that Donald Trump says that the WTO, the World Trade Organization, has failed to police. So countries have erected tariffs internally that have hindered U.S. goods from competing fairly. And so American companies have had to reduce costs and find productivities and so on. The wages of an American worker have not increased anywhere near as rapidly as the wages of a foreign worker because of some of these tariffs. The same tariff, indirect tariff in Europe is 21.8%. There is no VAT in America, 0%.
0%. Mr. Joseph, to interject there, I hear you talking about the different types of tariffs. In this case, then, what are reciprocal tariffs versus import tariffs in that sense? And what differences? I'm asking this in light of the recent 20% tariff on imported vehicles and now the 30% tariff. Are these measures one and the same, or are there key differences?
Yes. So let me just put it to you this way. What the government of the United States is saying here, I guess the administration is saying here, is that the United States records a trade deficit, okay, records a trade deficit against much of the world, okay, so it imports more than it exports, right? And the reason for that is not because American goods are not competitive, but because of the pricing differences that occur inside of a country like South Africa, where a local manufacturer gets rebates and American products pay higher taxes at the port. You know, again, by the way, Norway has the lowest tariffs in the world, 0% at port, 0%. America has 3%. China has 10%. So this is really what the United States is talking about here, is that the United States allows for much freer trade, yet it records a trade deficit. So what it wants to do, the objective is to go from a negative trade balance, in other words, from a trade deficit to trade neutral. to trade neutral. Okay, let's export as much as we import from you. So consider the trade deficit against China is the largest in the world the United States records, but the United States has a trade deficit against South Africa too, right? In no small part because South Africa has higher import tariffs, or shall I say excise duties at the port. I think about 13% on average. And then South Africa has now increased its VAT from 14 to 15.5%. So that's another barrier, right? And those two barriers disadvantage an American product by 25%.
And
so they want to take away that 25% difference and get to a trade neutral position.
And Mr. Joseph, we've now just heard that the Minister for Trade Industry, Minister Paksta, who says that South African tariffs for the U.S. good are much lower. How then do we justify President Trump's 30% decision? And is it fair in any way?
Well, I think that what the minister simply has to recognize is that the trade relationship between South Africa and the United States has a trade deficit to the United States on it, right? Number one. He also has to recognize the fact that South Africa has a 15.5% VAT against the United States that has a 0% VAT. He also has to recognize that America has a 3% direct tariff at the ports. South Africa has an average of 13% tariff at the ports. So already that's certainly well over, that's about 30.5% differential, okay? And what the United States is saying is, I want to take this differential from 35% disadvantage, so 35% against me, to a 0%. Let's be roughly close to equal. Now, I think what the minister is talking about when he says the tariffs are low, he's saying they're low relative to other countries. He's not addressing America's problem, which is they are low relative to what I, as America, am bringing into your country and sending to your country to compete against your products inside your country, okay? So in other words, America is saying it could actually do a lot more business in South Africa. Its products could find more home in South Africa if they were not faced with an additional 30% differential in direct tariffs at the port and VAT.
Would you then term this a trade war? And would you say that this move was necessary for the United States then in that way?
Oh, let me tell you how necessary it was. Okay, this is, I was saying today that the three terrible words, most dangerous words to utter in South Africa, if you're South African, which I am, by the way, is Trump is right. Okay. But Trump is right. Okay, he's not right on everything, but on this, Trump is dead right. Let me tell you how terrible this is, right? A trade balance is divided into two. A trade balance is divided into services and non-services. Okay, when it comes to services, America has a surplus. And now, what are services? It's Microsoft, it's technology, it's Microsoft, it's Amazon, it's consulting, it's cybersecurity companies that provide technological services, software-based services into South Africa. Okay. So there, America does really, really well. And if you like, in your South Africa and you want a tariff, Microsoft, go ahead and do that and see how that works out for you. But go ahead and do that. You're free to do that, right? And then there's non-services. Now, non-services are all the manufacturing and agricultural jobs that have been exported out of the United States.
Mr. Giose, unfortunately, we have run out of time. That was Mr. Hlelo Giose, Chief Investment Officer at First Avenue Investment Management. We'll be right back after this short break. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Now for this, the Democratic Alliance has filed papers in the Western Cape High Court today to challenge Parliament's passing of the 2025 national budget. The party says this court action changes the face of how decisions are taken in Parliament. Continue. Justice Minister Mamoloko Kubayi says that she has requested a comprehensive report from the National Director of Public Prosecutions on why Timothy Omotoso was acquitted. Omotoso walked out a free man from the High Court in Gqeberha on Tuesday after spending 8 years in custody since his arrest in April 2027.
I've given the NDPP until Monday, the 7th, to give me a report in terms of this matter, and will take the matter forward. This concerns me more because many of the victims of GBV take real effort, but out of their comfort to go and testify in court, and my fear as a Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development is that this outcome might discourage many who have been brave enough to stand against the most powerful people to give testimony in court, some in the most discomfort way, where they exposes themselves to public scrutiny of what has happened.
We are going to take a quick break. More stories after this short break. Do stay with us on Prime News. Welcome back now for your sports news. Orlando Pirates mentor Jose Rivero has shocked Buccaneers supporters by announcing that he will step down as head coach at the end of the season. Rivero has informed management of his decision not to renew his contract when it expires. He says it is in the club's best interest. He made the announcement today to ensure business as usual for the remainder of the season. Rivero would have spent 2.5 seasons with the team. Pirates have excelled under Rivero this season. He secured 3 MTN titles and 2 Nedbank Cups for the Buccaneers. They are currently second on the Betway Premiership log, with a mathematical chance of winning the league title. The Buccaneers are currently been in the quarterfinals of the CAF Championship League and in the semi-finals of the Nedbank Cup. Former champions Mamelodi Sundowns say they will cooperate with the Confederation of Africa Football in its investigation into the crowd violence that erupted after Tuesday's Champions League first leg quarter-final match against Tunisian club Esperance. Supporters clashed in the stands following the final whistle, although evidence suggests that Esperance supporters were the main instigators. Sundowns apologized and said that they would give their full cooperation in the case of an investigation. In one of the social media posts of the incident, a Sundowns fan, Busiso Msango, can be seen coming to the aid of an Esperance supporter. The Tunisian man who fled the fighting was hanging for dear life after falling from the upper tier, but was pulled to safety. The two teams meet in the second leg in Tunisia on Tuesday, where Sundowns, who enjoy a 1-0 advantage, can expect a hostile reception. Financially troubled KwaZulu-Natal-based Betway Premiership club Royal AM will learn its fate next Thursday. They face expulsion from the Premier League, with the league's board of governors, who made up of the other clubs in the league, expected to ratify recommendations made by the executive committee. Royal AM were put under curatorship by the South African Revenue Services last year because of owner Sean Mkhize's approximate 40 million rand debt to SARS and haven't played a match since December. The PSL bemoaned their failure to fulfill their obligation and further blamed the club for misrepresenting material information when applying for the renewal of membership to the league in July last year. The club was put on auction earlier this year, and a controversial Durban businessman, Roy Moodley, who has a deep-rooted political connections, was the successful bidder. But the sale fell through when he failed to meet the payment terms. It is now time to have a look at what the weather has in store for us.
Good evening to you. Let's take a look at all your weather details. 55 km/h southeasterly winds in Cape Town this evening, with sunny skies expected to turn into a clear evening. But widespread showers expected through the Northern Cape in towards the Free State and Northwest Province, as well as Gauteng. And ahead towards tomorrow, more widespread rainfall on the cards for Botswana, southwards in towards the Northwest Province, Northern Cape, Free State, as well as KwaZulu-Natal and the Eastern Cape. Johannesburg and Mpumalanga, 60% chance of rainfall for tomorrow. Be on the lookout for fog patches through the Eastern Escarpment on the coastline tomorrow, whilst Friday sees as well partly cloudy conditions in and around the Cape Peninsula and southeasters up to 40 kilometres an hour. Severe thunderstorms possible through the shade of yellow on the map this evening, as well as disruptive rainfall. A level 2 warning from the Weather Service for parts of Mpumalanga, and ahead towards tomorrow, severe thunderstorms again possible through the central parts of the country on towards the Eastern Escarpment, whilst damaging winds into the forecast for the coastline between Gqeberha and Durban. Overnight temperatures in Port St John's dropping to 17, Cape Town 16, while Vryburg drops to 17 degrees in the northwest. Pretoria down to 16 overnight, warming up on Friday to a maximum of 21 degrees under thick cloud cover and a 60% chance of rain. Mid-20s for the east coast of the country, southwards in towards Gqeberha, 24 is expected. Cape Town warmer at 29, Worcester 32, and still hot conditions expected in Vredendal at 35 degrees. Ahead towards Saturday, and it's going to remain to be partly cloudy for the Western Cape in towards the Northern Cape, where cooler temperatures are expected. It'll also be cool through Mpumalanga in towards Gauteng and the Northwest Province, with rainfall persistent along the east coast. And ahead towards Sunday, you can expect some scattered showers through the central parts, cooler temperatures in northern KwaZulu-Natal, and hot temperatures under partly cloudy conditions for Cape Town. That's it from me. Enjoy your evening.
Well, that concludes our time together this evening. Much gratitude. Until next time, good night and God bless.